This episode of the KrakCast is brought to you by our friends at BigDoor24.pl. It's a new service that not only matches expats with local property experts who speak their language, but it gives you cash-back discounts on successful credit applications. So go to BigDoor24.pl, that's BigDoor24.pl. Find out all the information you need to get the mortgage you want. Again, BigDoor24.pl. Make sure you use the special promo code KrakCast to get a great cash-back offer. And now, on with the show.
Welcome to this very special edition of the KrakCast. Dave is back in the host seat. We are Bez John today.
But please keep listening. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, really. We've worked hard at papering over the cracks.
We're also Bez interesting news to talk about. Let's be quite. Yeah, that might be a new thing I do. Bez. Yeah, sorry about that, Poland. Okay.
Yeah, and happy Mondays.
Yeah. Okay. First joke from Josh. Good man. Here we go. Right, we are going to talk about teacher strikes first up. We've been covering this story closely over the last few weeks. It's one of the hot-button issues in Polish politics at the moment. Mike, give us an update.
Well, the teacher strike happened. Last time we were recording, we still didn't know. Maybe they would pull out. Maybe, they would come to a last-minute deal, but it didn't happen. The teachers' union went on strike starting April 8th. They stopped going to classes, and it was 80% of basically... it depends on actually who you talk to, because the government says it's about 50% of schools weren't operating, while the union said it was about 80%. But it turns out like some schools are actually 2 or 3 schools put together, and some were counting this as one area, one school, others were counting it in multiple areas. So it really depends on the sources. But let's put it this way. If you have a parent with kids under 18, they probably won't go into classes now. And it's been hilarious. It has been. It's become basically like in the States with like Trump and the Russia thing right now. It's like whose fault is it? Who's doing it? Who's behind what? You change the channels between the major news networks, and it's like a completely different story. But what happened? Teachers went on strike, and this week was supposed to be the week where 8th graders, or actually not 8th graders, but those students ending gymnasium, to have their exams to get into high school. So a major thing. And the teacher strike basically meant like, well, is this going to happen or not? So the government basically pulled everybody out of retirement, or anybody that is certified to actually teach children or be in charge of them, to man the rooms to allow the students to actually have their exams. There are funny stories of like, people who are in their 90s there, like making sure that the exams are happening, like priests or people that have never seen a kid in their lives because they just got a certificate as an extra thing to put in their resume 25 years ago. So the exams happened, even though nobody knew what happened in the last moment. There's also talk about the 8th graders, like final exams next week, if they'll happen or not. There's also been talk from the superintendent of Małopolska, Mrs. Barbara Nowak, saying that she's part of the government here. She's like a representative of the government as a superintendent of the public school system. She's been saying that she's seen text messages sent between striking teachers, reminding each other that, remember that if we don't post their grades, they're not going to the next class. They're not going to take the Matura exams, and they're not going to university. So that's always an ace up our sleeve if you want to protest. Something that the head of the teachers union, Bronia, said would never, ever happen. So it's been very interesting.
Well, would it be fair to say, Mike, that I don't want to oversimplify, but this seems to me the start of a new era in Polish politics, something that's very common, of course, in most Western democracies, as the phrase goes. Vicious arguments politically about strikes, about public sector pay, about what's the right level, etc. And it seems to me in Poland, the history of solidarity, etc., in previous years gone by, it would have been automatically people would have been behind the teachers. But now, with Polish politics the way it is at the moment, quite heated, that this is the first full-on politicised evening news strike where every development, every kind of blow back and forth is being really followed like a game of tennis. Would you say, am I getting somewhere, Mike? Was there something to my theory?
You're definitely hitting the nail on the head there, and you're right about the fact that it's being politicized. Over the last 3 or so decades, whenever there was a teacher strike, because they happen everywhere, the majority, we're talking 99% of the populace supported teachers. This time around, the stats that I've been hearing from my man Jan Rokita, a previous Polish politician who's now like just a news personality, from Krakow as well, saying that like the latest polls are showing that only about 50% of the population supports the teachers that are striking, while 40-some% are against them. And of course, this goes straight down party lines. So this issue has become completely politicized. Basically, depending on which side of the political spectrum you're on, is whether or not you're for the teachers, except for me, because I'm definitely anti-peace. But I also really, really don't like the teachers here after going through high school here. I think they don't deserve anything more. Maybe I just had some bad experiences, though.
Ouch. Josh?
Well, I think this political point is one of the most interesting ones, because it then seems like it's less about what is right and wrong and more, where do you kind of nail your colours in terms of the whole issue of things like public servants and how much they should be paid with regards to the handsome benefits that go along with public sector employment and that kind of thing. And it does seem that it does split down. Although, peace kind of are expanding the public sector as well, aren't they? I mean, this is why they're not really, it's hard to really label them an extreme right-wing party or even a far right-wing party or even a right-wing party, actually, because,
well, that's why a lot of the left-leaning parties in Poland have had a lot of trouble like gaining any traction, is because all the like social issues when it comes to like welfare payments, stuff like that, have been taken up by peace. They basically given money to all the less privileged groups. So those people are like, oh, we don't really care about those issues that those left-leaning parties are voting for. So because peace is giving us money, and that's what matters.
I've said a few.
Who forgot to turn off their phone?
Oh, Josh. Our sound producer forgot to turn off his phone. A few times, though, I've mentioned on the show that I think there is plenty of room for growth for wages in the public sector. It's going to be a essential thing that's just going to have to happen. They're just going to have to come up. They're way below the average industrial wage.
Well, we could have a thing, of course, where you have like a voucher system and that schools are essentially kind of, maybe funded out of taxpayers' money, but schools operate independently and they actually decide how much they want to pay teachers in terms of the kind of employees they want to attract, which is my kind of...
There's actually been a lot of political parties in Poland. One of them is Wolność with its Korwin-Mikke, and Cookies as well has been talked about a voucher system.
Right.
Basically being like the money that the government now collects and gives to education would be put in one big account and then divided amongst the amount of people that have, kids and students in their families, and each of them would get vouchers of that value, and they could go to any school they want to, public or private. Private schools could take that voucher, or they could ask for that voucher plus, a little bit of extra cash, but you would get that money if you're a parent, and you would decide where you'd want.
Right.
I think it's
that's consistently been going on. Sorry, Dave. In the United States, that's been kind of touted for ages, and it's always the teachers' unions and the Democratic Party that is strongly resistant, which is kind of an interesting observation, I think.
Well, I would have to counter that, Polish school system seems to be doing something right, considering the quality of people they've been spitting out over the last 10 or 20 years. There's a danger of throwing the baby out with the bathwater in terms of voucher systems, etc. The Polish education system
a month down the drain, wouldn't it?
Seems to be functioning pretty well. This is a bit of a wage dispute, quite frankly. It's plain and simple. They want a decent raise. It's nearly 20% they're looking for, isn't it?
Actually, 30%. It depends on who you talk to, because, for instance, Solidarność, which is another union that
they pulled out of the talks, and they were happy
because they got a deal, which basically meant that they were getting pay rises that would be spread over the next couple of years, plus some like extra benefits. And they said, like, we're not going to strike because we basically got what we wanted, what we were talking about for years. While ZNP, the other union, the bigger one, says like, no, we want more. So the government basically came up with a proposition the other week saying like, okay, we'll give you more money if you go from having like the 18 base hours per week of like Blackboard time to 22, plus a few other like benefits switched around here and there. So it was a proposition. The union said no flat out, and then I also remember I was shocked to hear that like most teachers here only have to have 18 hours of Blackboard time. Then you hear about teachers like in class from 9 in the morning to 11 or 12, then go to a second job. They're not going to a second job just for the extra money. They're going to a second job because they have more than enough time. Yes, people say you need to prepare for classes or you need to check exams and stuff like that, but for Christ's sakes, it's not that much extra time. Even if it's 18 hours that you actually spend with students, what do you need another 18 hours to prepare for those classes and check exams? If you do need that much time, then maybe you shouldn't be teaching our youth how to live their lives or organize and manage their own time. It's like you're definitely not the fastest one in the bunch there.
What is the mechanism for a high-profile deadlock like this between the government and the labour unions? In Ireland, this would go to a labour court ruling where it wouldn't be binding. They could both, put the labour court ruling to their members if they found it acceptable, the union reps. Is there any mechanism like that in the Polish system?
Well, the union has been suggesting to bring in an outside mediator, and there are mediators who has a legal framework. I don't know if there's a labor court in the sense that could actually talk about like the strikers and stuff like that. We'll see what happens. But this definitely looks like it will drag on for a while. It could make it difficult for students that want to graduate and do their matura exams before going off to university. There's talk about Platforma and the other political parties basically want to drag this out until the European elections. But the problem is if they try to make it drag out that long, it might just peter out as well. And the government will win just by, a war of attrition here. And teachers would just slowly fade away.
I mean, I have to give us credit. Going back a good few months, we were talking about how there was going to be a big strike soon, and then it would all start to snowball, the public pay sector thing. They should just try and do a one big deal, a round table, with all of the unions, the whole public sector, put a bit of certainty into it, and maybe, stop all the dreadful stoppages I bet are coming across all of the public sector. Who do you think will be next, Mike? Because this is inevitable, right? As soon as this teacher strike is settled, the next group's going to come forward. Who do you think it's going to be?
Even though they've been striking a lot recently, I wouldn't be surprised if it's doctors or nurses again.
I wouldn't either.
The nurses and doctors were striking a year and a half ago to increase the amount of money from the budget that goes into the system, but they didn't get a solid deal. They just kind of tapered off, and that's definitely a group that people will always support, because as soon as something is wrong, they always blame the government and not the actual doctors or the healthcare system directly. They just say it's not enough money when they don't realize it's more to it than just the money. Who else, though? God, it's a garbage man, for instance, now with all this recycling crap going on. Who knows what they'll start complaining about. Tram drivers and bus drivers, everybody can strike right now. It's and you're right, they should come up with a general approach to prevent all of these problems from spreading. And again, I have to talk about the other political parties that actually have given ideas. Mainly, again, Cookies and Wolność, suggesting that we need to increase the amount of pay that is not taxed from, about 3,000 right now to closer to 30 or 1,000 plus. That basically means everybody's wages, take-home pay is increased without the government actually having to give those people more money to begin with. And we all know, if the government is giving you money, they have to take it from somebody else, which usually means they have to take more from somebody else.
Okay, heavy public sector pay discussion here on the KrakCast. Now for something else.
Even sexier.
Or even interesting.
What is this bill about the extension of a set of benefits for people able to prove their Polish ancestry, the so-called Poles card, Mike? Explain the concept for our listeners.
Karta Polaka is basically...
I love it when you talk dirty.
Oh, good thing there's no cameras in here, because people will see that we might not be wearing clothes. Might not be. I'm not saying we're not, but, just suggesting that for comic effect. Okay, let's keep going.
There was no comic effect, Mike. That's why you see some tumbleweed flying across your eyes here.
All right.
Moving on.
Yes. The Karta Polaka is basically directed at people who have Polish ancestry living especially east of Poland. As we all know, when the communists took over, the Soviets took over Poland, there was a lot of deportation going on, especially being sent off to Siberia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, the other stands that I'll sound racist now for not remembering. And they were settled there.
Azerbaijan.
There's no stand in that.
I know, I did that deliberately.
Damn you. And, they had children, they had families, but they felt a connection to Poland along all that time. Culturally, nationally, they were Polish. And, but, legally speaking, they were not. So years and years ago, government, even this is before peace or PO, had something called Karta Polaka, which gave these people something, not like a passport, but legal mechanism to come into Poland to maybe look for a job here, to get some type of residency.
Mm-hmm. And they want to expand this program, don't they?
They want to expand this to basically...
Is this a way, Mike? When I saw this is what I thought. I thought this is another way of peace, kind of, actually encouraging immigration, which they know is badly needed in an economy that's absolute full employment pretty much now. Anyone will tell you about the local city recruitment markets, how tough they are to find people these days. Is that what's behind this, really,
Maybe a little bit, but I think it's more about the fact that it just earns them some cheap patriot points when it comes to the next elections, because they don't have to do much. These people, when they do come to Poland, they generally are educated. They definitely want to work, so it's not a problem. They have to be to an excessive extent supported by government money whatsoever. It may be a little bit on the beginnings, and there is talk about in this Karta Polaka like subsidies for housing or education training to get them into the workforce. And they want to expand this program now, so we wouldn't just talk about people in these like post-Soviet states that were forcefully deported several generations ago, but anybody of Polish ancestry outside of Poland. And what you might remember, all our longtime listeners, that we actually had an interview that I wasn't a part of with a woman from Australia who actually led a company or was part.
Eva Hussein, big shout out, Eva.
Yes, I remember that was before I joined. I remember that was one of my favorite interviews. And one of the issues there is that the fact you can get Polish citizenship if you could just prove that you had like a Polish ancestor, like grandparent, parent, etc. And Polish citizenship is by bloodlines. So this Karta Polaka is kind of like a halfway step. It's a lot easier to get into Poland with it than proving you have Polish bloodlines right away. But once you're here, then it also cuts down on consular fees and all the other paperwork to get your full-blown Polish citizenship if you want that.
Well, that's enough about all that, Mikey. I want to talk to you about new museums. Exciting stuff. The Battle of Grunwald. What does that mean to you, Mike?
As a Polish person, it is a symbol, a point of pride, something that every Pole in the world, when they hears the Bitwa pod Grunwaldem, they think back to that summer's day.
The Battle of Grunwald.
15th.
Yes.
1410. We beat back the Teutons.
You even know the time. It was 2:10 in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
That's something along those lines. Yeah, it was a hot summer's day. Yeah, that was part of the tactic there.
It stopped the Teutonic Knight expansion along the southern east coast of the Baltic Sea and marked the emergence of Poland-Lithuania as one of Europe's largest, most powerful states, and was indeed one of the largest pitched battles in the whole of medieval history.
And the Teutonic Knights, they were German, right? Or no? Well, Germany was. Oh, were they Prussian?
They were Teutonic. Let's not get in the weeds on medieval statehood.
They were Teutonic.
About politics.
They weren't tonic enough.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to talk about this a little bit because the Battle of Grunwald means so much to Polish people, and also I seen the Lego set up at the train station. It's awesome. You gotta check it out, man.
They have a lot of little Legos in blood and kind of sinking in mud and stuff like that, screaming for their
There's
mothers.
a vast forest on both sides of the display, a Lego forest, and there's little Lego characters everywhere. I mean, thousands of them, man, and all of the walls are covered with projection screens, and there's projectors like putting like fire on the walls, and and there's this tense build up. It's very dramatic. I have to recommend the Lego Museum quite highly. Has a massive sculptural recreations in Lego of all Poland's main monuments: Wawel Castle Cathedral and Jasna Gorna Monastery.
I think we'd be remiss
just say suppository.
that John is a huge fan of Lego movies. I mean, he thinks they're the.
So am I. To be
actually,
fair,
me too. I think Lego movies cannot be praised high enough.
I believe the Lego Batman movie to be one of the funniest movies ever made.
Lego Movie 2 is out now.
It is. I have it downloaded, but Natalia's not having it, so I'm gonna have to watch that on my own time.
I haven't watched it yet. Maybe you want to come around with a tin or two, and we can have a sneaky Lego Movie 2. Even.
Definitely. I don't think John would be too happy if we planned that on holidays while he wasn't here, but maybe one day.
Well, maybe you can hurry back.
Yeah, fuck him. Enjoy your holidays, John. Yeah, we should say John's off on his annual jaunt back to catch alligators and, just clean up the old Everglades. Those pythons are getting away with murder while he's living over here in Europe here. What were we talking about again? The Battle of Grunwald. They're building this huge new museum co-funded with the EU, don't you know? 30 million zloty investment will be co-financed with the European Operational Programme Infrastructure and Environment
the Germans
Fund.
are happy about that.
And the regional government, yes.
They lost the battle, and 600 years later, they have to pay for the museum.
Mike, have you ever been up there? It's in like the Missouri type area, and they already do a lot of pitched recreations and stuff. I assume this is about expanding it as a tourist attraction.
I mean, I've never been there when the reenactment happens, but apparently it's huge, especially the one that happened on the anniversary in 2010, the 600-year anniversary. Apparently it was the largest medieval battle reenactment in history, with people from all over the world that came to see it. And, it was like Woodstock, cars parked 20 kilometers away for people who actually want to go and...
Nerdstock.
and it was a huge event. And it seems like
Greenwood stock, for a literal translation, wouldn't it?
I think
Don't get it.
Grunwald, German for greenwood.
I think they might be trying to turn this into kind of like a maybe not a medieval themed park, but something on those lines. It's historically accurate, but they want to make money off of the area and stuff like that. You show up there and you get your plastic sword, or you can't have plastic anymore, so your wooden sword, your knight's outfit, and you tell yourself that you brought your kids here for history when you actually just want to run around and whack people over the head.
There was something
burger afterwards. Yeah.
There was something cool I saw that if anything shows the great work the EU does, this is it, man, and I mean that genuinely, because I love projects like this. The new 3,500 square foot building will be multifunctional. It will not include only exhibition space, but also, check this out, an indoor court for staging medieval night tournaments and a conference room. What do you think of that? That
Surely
sounds
you
pretty...
jest.
Yeah, it sounds like in those White Castle movies, the Harold and Kumar one where they're like having fights. Is that a real thing in America? Mikey, you go to America.
Yes, actually. Did you ever watch that movie, The Cable Guy, with Jim Carrey?
I did.
Yeah, I love that movie.
They had that medieval times dinner and tournament. I went to one of those things when I was about 10 years old. I loved it.
Brilliant.
You're getting chicken served. You're eating with your hands. Everybody gets a little Burger King style crown, and you're watching people down there in front of you joust and sword fight and stuff like that. It was hilarious.
Any racks or torturing or burning at the stake or.
Well, I did smell a lot of barbecue, but I don't know if that.
That was weird. When I was growing up, that was everyone's favorite Jim Carrey movie.
Everybody says it almost.
Well, he acted in that one, didn't he? Yeah.
But I thought it was actually quite all right.
I love the bit where he's climbing up the satellite at the end. He's like, "Do you know the problem with real life? There's no danger music." Okay, how do we get here? Yeah, so back on to stuff about Poland. What have we got next, Mikey?
Robert Lewandowski, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, Lewandowski broke another record. He's in the plus 200 league goals club now. There's only 4 other players in the history of German football. One of them Jupoinkas, one of them Gerd Muller, these type of legendary names. And now
Teutonic Knights to a man.
And yeah, what can you say about it, really? It's just another landmark in his incredible career. I don't really have anything interesting to add to that. And he got in a fight in training.
Clearly he was celebrating this a little too vigorously and got involved in a
little fisticuffs with the wonderfully monikered Kingsley Coman. Yeah, I don't know how the fight ended. Didn't see any footage really, but I'm hoping Lewandowski held his own and
kicked his ass.
Didn't get battered.
Actually, speaking of just kicking balls around, if my neighbors are listening to this podcast, you Airbnb bastards, you do not let your 6-year-old girls out into the hallway at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning to kick a ball around against the door, okay? Sorry, it's just not the way to be done. Tonight at 2 a.m, I'm going to be playing a horror movie or a porn really loud so you guys can hear that through the wall and you can explain it to your little girls what's that all about.
There we go. Don't mess with Mikey.
Labour shortages are stifling the Polish economy, Mike.
This is something that nobody would expect in a country that had double-digit unemployment, in the 90s and the early 2000s. Now some are saying that unemployment is under 4%.
How do you say this? The finance minister's name, Teresa Czerwinska, is that correct?
That's good enough.
Okay, that's close enough. She wrote an editorial about this at the weekend where she basically pushed the idea of, raising the amount you pay before you start paying tax, basically lowering the income tax rate by 1 point, was it?
Yes, the PIT, personal income tax, from 18 to 17% for the lowest earners. And it's kind of funny how she's saying all these things that other political parties like Cookies and Volnish have been saying for years, but nobody seems to take seriously. And this actually goes back to our discussion about the teachers' unions, that if you raise the amount of pay that's before it's taxed, then a lot of people have more, take-home income. And that solves a lot of issues, a lot of problems without the government actually have to giving any money to these people. But apparently you have to understand, she's part of a group in the government that is a little more for fiscal responsibility and proper spending. Apparently she's been holding back a lot of the other ministers that want to spend more money, especially on welfare programs. So when the reshuffling of the government comes around in a month or so, it will be interesting to see if she's still here come summer.
Yes, she's trying to keep the deficit down, of course, keep inflation down, and sounds like she's got a battle on her hands to stop the all free spending peace, left-wing social spendy that we discussed earlier, Mike, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. She's got her work cut out for her. And, you might not like peace, but there's definitely...
election year, baby.
Exactly. There's a handful of people in there that are kind of holding it all together. And they're the main reason that peace has any chance of like going ahead with its other propositions, especially when it comes to, like populist rhetoric and stuff like that. It's like if these people left, then peace could promise whatever it wants, hand out all the money it would want, but the ship would sink. It just like things could not hold their own together. Poland's doing so well economically right now. And it's not thanks to peace. It's thanks to a lot of hardworking Polish people that actually go out there every day, work, earn wages, earn money, and push the economy forward. And there's a handful of people in the right places that help this to actually keep going. Just make sure no matter which political party wins, that there's those handful of people like that still stay in some kind of positions of influence.
Automotive experts.
Exports?
Stupid words. Yeah, exports. They're the ones. 26 billion euros in car exports last year Poland had. Booming sector of the economy. The automotive industry amounts to 8% of the GDP of this country and 10% of the jobs in industry, as they say, in manufacturing, etc. Massive success story for the Polish economy.
I mean, it's a huge part of why the economy is doing so well. And it's not actually just cars that are being manufactured. You have to realize when a car is being put together somewhere, all those parts are coming from different parts of the world. And right now, Poland produces a lot of those accessory parts and smaller parts that you don't realize are in a car. They're being sent off to factories all over the world to put these things together. I know, like, for instance, like the door locking mechanism of most Mercedes, BMWs, and other cars, like inside that door, it's the same thing in so many models. And it's a lot of that is made in Poland. It's all these like little nitty-gritty parts that are the same in every car are being produced in Poland, and they definitely have a lot of expertise in that. They definitely have a lot of experience in the manufacturing, and Poland is really booming when it comes to that. I mean, we're just having now a new factory being built in Poland by Mercedes.
Yeah, in Janów or something. Yeah.
Exactly. The
engine factory.
The petrol
engines are important. That's a good thing to build.
Germany's basically said like, oh, we're going green, so no more guzzling engines are going to be made here. So Mercedes said, like, okay, we'll just move our production over the border here. So for the next 20 years or so, Polish workers will be making money off of that. Fine with me. Of course, there's talk about going to an electric car kind of economy and mobility structure. Fair enough, but there's still going to be diesel engines and gasoline engines being built to be put in cars all over the world for a generation to come. Build them in Poland if Germany doesn't want those jobs.
Yeah, the future is bright. Is that what you're trying to say?
Very much so, yeah. Put on your sunglasses.
Sometimes I find it hard to tell when you're being real upbeat and sunny like that, It's, the economic miracle of Poland post-communism is something that we talk about a lot on this show, and I think rightly so. It's important that when you're in the middle of, say, a teacher strike to step back from the weeds and look at just how well
that's
things...
kind of the reason for the teachers strike and all these other strikes. Yeah. They see things getting better. The government handing out money left and right. It's like, well, we want a piece of that as well. So... Mm-hmm.
And in fact, sorry to butt in, but you could almost make a case that having a kind of somewhat inefficient and maybe not corrupt, but certainly kind of wrong-headed majority government is kind of acting as a natural brake on an economy that would otherwise be in severe danger of overheating.
I mean, I always like to say that like the best type of government is the one that's too busy, bickering about themselves instead of getting in people's way.
Right.
I mean, and I think you're right. It's like if they were in too much control, they'd want to spend too much of this money, or they try too much to speed things along to have more money to spend on more votes. Here, they're too busy, bitching between themselves and like on issues that don't really matter. So the economy's doing fine.
Yeah, that's something I'd agree with totally as well. And I very much see the strikes as something. That's why I said they should do a national deal, because I see it as something that's just going to happen anyway. They can afford to do it. The pay should go up for the public sector in this country. If you measure it against the average industrial wage in most countries, it's well below it rather than being on par or insane.
I actually disagree about that kind of whole negotiating thing now, because I think what kind of national finances, and this is true in all countries, what they rely on is the kind of hysteresis, the drag. You don't give them their pay award. They argue about it. They say, if you don't give us it, you will strike. They will say, like, oh, yeah, okay, so really, and in all the time, time is passing. And, if you say, do you know what, we want to be nice to you guys, let's just sort something out so that we don't have any threats of strikes, and we're going to give you this now, and like you say yes, we say yes, and then you're paying more straight away.
True. Yeah, no,
Actually,
that's the other way of looking at
strikes. This is complete digression. I just saw like a funny article talking about strikes. You know how like all elevators now are automatic, but like the old time movies, you would see operators.
Right.
So there were operators in the U.S. up until the 40s, even though automated elevators were a thing since the early 1900s. But people didn't want to use those automated elevators because they looked at them the same way people look at autonomous cars right now. Maybe the technology can do it, but you don't feel very safe. You want somebody there at the wheel, or in this scenario at the what do they call those at the lever, whatever. It wasn't until a huge strike in 1946, I believe, when they all went on strike.
Shoot yourself in the foot.
Switched over to automated elevators everywhere, and those people were out of a job within 2 years.
Grand Hotel Budapest, though. That's
certainly when it comes to tram drivers, etc., you would think that's a pertinent lesson from history, all right, Mikey. Yes.
Well, they tried it on the London Underground as well, didn't they? Yes. And it's not going to happen many times more.
Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to get you to pronounce something for me, Mikey. What is this castle that they're filming Witcher in? There's some excitement in the media that they're actually filming Witcher in Poland. Go Netflix! Can you get your eyes around that? Because I ain't going near that one.
All right, well, you're not giving me this in large enough print, some far, far away, so just tell me out loud how do you spell it, because actually that would be hilarious if you try to spell it to me and I'll try to pronounce it.
That big enough here?
Ogrodzie.
Nicely said. That's what I was going to say, obviously.
Ogroniecie.
Sorry. Okay. It's beautiful.
It's holding it up from a distance for me, so I'm having a little trouble saying it, so no worries. But yes, The Witcher, which is based on fantasy novels written by a Polish author.
Hold on, before we get to that, this is quite a ruin. This is a beautiful ruin of a castle. I love a good ruin of a castle. Like, there's something about a fully functional, nice, castle you can turn into a hotel. But the other class of the castle is the ruined castle. This is a very impressive ruined castle. We'll put a link up.
I mean, yeah, the picture is beautiful, and it definitely looks like something that you can have like a heavy metal satanic band, use it for a background for a video. It kind of looks like that. Just throw a few like bonfires around there. Like, it looks really, badass. But like we were talking about, this is happening with the new Witcher TV series or TV show being produced by Netflix. Witcher being a franchise based on Polish books. Everybody knows the video games. They're famous. It's basically, a fantasy world. You have their main character, a Witcher, who goes around. He's a monster killer, basically. And Netflix has picked this up as, a new fantasy TV show. And apparently there's some rumors that a few scenes, or at least some of them, are being filmed in Poland. How true that is, I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of money to fly all these people and all this equipment over to Poland when you can, film it in Canada or somewhere else for, a tenth of the amount of money. Though I think they would want to do this because if they film it in Poland, or at least a few scenes, then you can market it as in Poland, as in, having Polish background stuff. People will want to watch it because, oh, this is my neighborhood or something like that. Sort of like, I know these mountains, and they can get a lot more people to sign up for Netflix that way here in Poland. I think it's a easy marketing ploy.
I would have thought also it makes some kind of economic sense. I very much doubt that it's more expensive once you've shifted, the various technical personnel over here, kind of.
Yeah, remember, they also have a lot of quote unquote Hollywood personalities, which would have to be flown over here and given like the proper housing, and that would probably cost, because our famous, favorite neck breaking superhero.
Yeah, let's get the bad news out of the way here. The main character's name is Geralt of Rivia, and he's as you say, a kind of vampire fighting badass. Unfortunately, he's played by Henry Cavill. Oh. So while they are shooting this in Poland, they're also shooting Henry Cavill's stupid face. So this is bound to be dreadful. The man cannot act at all.
Hey, there's been so many advances in CG technology right now.
You cannot advance him at all.
Yeah, you can't CGI him out of it completely. Yeah.
Although he was in the new Mission Impossible movie, which was very good. Not because of him, just because of, Tom Cruise's usual commitments to amazing stunts. You say what you want about that man, but,
He's definitely going to die during one of those things. And
helicopter chase through the Himalayas. Unbelievable stuff. Bravuro. Anyway, what were we talking about? Witcher. I've never really read the books or anything, so I don't know what else to say. I'm excited to get into the whole Witcher phenomenon. It's a massive cult hit. There's a lot of apprehension with the comic book fans in the office. They're all expecting it to be shit in that kind of
it's going to be Game of Thrones level production.
Well, they did think that about Lord of the Rings when that was, supposed to be being filmed, wasn't it? Kind of like, oh my God, you can't possibly film. It'll be a disaster. And
they pretty much pulled it off, yeah.
Tolkien's son hates the movies, It's a bit ungrateful, isn't it? All the money they put in his back pocket.
well, maybe they didn't. I don't know the story behind all of that. But
I think the family actually didn't get much money out of it just because.
Oh, well, there we go. There's your answer in a nutshell, isn't it?
Interesting. Do you want to say anything else about plastic or anything? Or we had some links in there that we've talked about, little updates. I think
we've been talking about recycling.
We have been. We'll try not and go off on our rants. Okay, little news update.
Now it's finally.
We don't like to recycle our news.
Oh, nice.
I saw what you did there. Finally, a few politicians have actually put their money where their mouth is, and one councilman has supported a bill which basically means the first automat or machine that will take plastic bottles and spew out a little bit of cash is being set up in the main city council or Urząd Miejski building on near Powstanie Warszawskie. And you're going to get 10 grosses for each bottle, and they've got enough money there for the first 10,000. He's actually spent his own money, 1,000 zlotys. And they're hoping this will start a whole movement to bring in the concept of either paying for plastic bottles or having 10 grosze deposits for plastic bottles. Another thing the city council has actually voted in when it comes to the city hall is that they're going to step away from one-use plastic. So from plastic plates, forks, knives, etc. They're not going to have that in the offices anymore. And they also want to stop using plastic bottles. So they're going to suggest everybody there drinks tap water.
Okay.
Tap water is delicious in Krakow.
Yeah.
And clean and healthy.
I do drink the tap water.
Me too.
And talk to me about, public consultations about parking areas.
Oh, yeah, this is never a fantastic thing. A few years ago, the government changed the laws saying that the amount of money that the city could take for parking spaces could increase. So next week, starting next week, lasting for a week over the May long weekend when everybody's gone, they're going to start the public consultations for suggested changes in the parking zones, expansion, of course, and increasing the rates. Right now, and the rates will go up for the center of town to a maximum of 11 zlotys and 40 for the third hour you park here. So basically, when you're parking during the day, you're paying 50, 60, 70 zlotys to park during the day. And they expand the hours, of course, from 8 a.m. to 8 in the evening, Mondays to Sundays. So, yeah.
That'll get you about 15 minutes in the West End of London.
Well, what a beautiful miscellaneous municipal roundup there to end off this week's episode of the KrakCast Sans John. I can't promise you he'll be back next week. He's not here next week either, is he?
I don't think he is, no.
Yeah, so it'll be me having to, host the show again, which really is a pain in the ass. But it's been beautiful to be back in the seat, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.